First time I ever saw Jane was on May 6th in 1961, somewhere between 2 and 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a tennis court about 2 miles off campus. I mentioned chemistry earlier. I was doing miserably in chemistry, and I had to stay the weekend because I had to make up a lab. We had been given a solution, and I could not figure out, using a centrifuge, what was in that solution. And so I was able to stay, because I might have gone home otherwise. I spent the morning in the chem lab trying to figure out what chemicals were in that solution. And then in the afternoon, a couple of guys, one of whom had a car, we decided that we would get down to a place called Rock Rimmon, about 1.5 miles at most from the school, and went down there, and there were a few young ladies already on those tennis courts, and one of them was Jane.
When I met Jim, I was a freshman in nursing school, and it was a beautiful May day. It was hot, and it was a Saturday, and so my friend and I took a walk up to Rock Rimmon tennis courts, and there were 4 guys playing on the court. And one of the guys was Jim. And they started playing, and, you know, Soupy and I went on the court, and Dad walked by me, and he said, "You play tennis?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I play tennis."
Whether you could call what they were doing playing tennis, I think would be a stretch. We did talk, and I did find out that she was a nursing student, probably no more, within walking distance of those tennis courts, and that she was coming to the dance at St. A's that evening. And I told her I would be there waiting for her.
He said, "Oh, you know, there's a dance tonight. Are you going to it?" So I said, "Yeah, maybe." So anyways, that was it. Soupy and I finished playing what we thought we called tennis, went back to the dorm, and that night a bunch of us went up to the, they called it a mixer at that time. And that's where, and I met Dad again. Dad was at the dance, and that's how it started.
We danced most of the night, I suppose. I got her phone number and obviously made the call and showed up in Cochran Street in Methuen, and it's been 48 years since then. The first date from home, we went to the drive-in. I'm not particularly proud of that, but, you know, we went to a drive-in. We went to the Riverview Drive-In. And I couldn't possibly tell you what movie we saw. No recollection. I just know who I was with.
I don't know the name of the movie I saw, and I did see the movie. I did not kiss him. I did not kiss Jim on the first date.
I went to Methuen to 27 Cochran Street in a 1956 black and white Chevy Bel Air. And that's the memory I have of our first date.
I didn't have summers off in nursing school. Nursing school went all year round. And I was home, Jim was home, and we had borrowed my mother's Ford station wagon to go out on a date. And we were coming back in Haverhill, and there's a ball field. I think we've pointed that out to you a number of times. As you're coming from Plastow, and you're going towards Uno's, and on the right is a baseball field. Well, we pulled into there to go parking, and he pulled onto the baseball field, and we're parking, and then we decided we had to get home, and he backed right into a bench and totally crushed the rear end of my mother's station wagon. I think what we had done was we had dented the gas tank.
It didn't fall off. It just had a big leak, and it had been crunched, so to speak. And we never told her father. It was never discussed. It was never. I had to get a new gas tank for the car. I never took responsibility. I don't think he ever asked Jane what happened. One of those things where you'd rather not know. But we still drive by that bench and that field twice a week. Whenever we go to Uno's, it's right there. Well, the bench may not be there, but the field, the Como field is still there. That was a funny night. We got engaged on November 23rd, 1963. That, unfortunately, is a very easy date to remember because on November 22nd, John F. Kennedy was killed. And so one might question whether that was really a good time to go through with the engagement, because you have no idea what a depressed state the country was in, including us. But we were home that weekend. That had been the plan for me. The plan had been, and I had the diamond. We got engaged, and we were actually at 68 Fountain Street. Parents were in bed. I mean, they weren't part of it, but probably at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, I had that ring, and I gave her the ring. We then went home to Cochrane Street. She announced it to her parents, and her mother began to cry. So, but, you know, it was a tough period of time.
My mother was extremely unhappy. My father was, my father was always kind of easygoing anyways. He figures, oh, here's another milestone. Not happy about it particularly, but my mother had an absolute bird.
That news, along perhaps with the death of Kennedy 24 hours earlier, caused her mother to break down in tears, and I can assure you they were not tears of joy. I think the fact that she was marrying or was engaged to marry the son of an Italian bookie from Haverhill rather than some Irish kid from South Lawrence really didn't set well with her for quite a while. Very, very Irish couple.
My maternal grandfather wouldn't even come to our wedding because Jim was Italian.
That kind of passed. As the years went by, it surely got much better. So getting married in 1964 means Jane and I were both 21 years old. Looking back now, it seems young. But back then, it was probably an average age for people to get married. So we made arrangements to get married in September 1964. We booked St. Monica's Church for the wedding at 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon.
Oh, it was nice. The ceremony was really nice. We were married by a friend of our family's, Father Lombard, who had been a friend for years and years and years. It was a Catholic ceremony, big Catholic ceremony. Exchanging of the vows, exchanging of the rings. I had 3 bridesmaids. I had my best friend at the time, Judy Lillibitty. I had my sister Kate, and I had Jim's sister Marianne.
And we had a couple of hundred people there. And my cousin Frank was my best man. And of course, Jane's sister Kate was the maid of honor. And the wedding went off as weddings do. It was still sunny. It had rained earlier in the day, I think, but it was sunny as when the wedding took place. And then we only had to go about a half a mile to Gathon Hall, a function hall. And so we had our reception there, and we'll never know, but somebody that day had called in a bomb scare. We didn't find out about this until after. But at 7 o'clock, the place had to be emptied.
The wedding reception was immediately cut in half because of the bomb scare. So we all had to leave and go to my parents' house to finish the festivities.
Now, our honeymoon was nothing extravagant. I had taken a job as a teacher up in Montpelier, Vermont, and I had begun teaching the week before the wedding. I maybe taught Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, came home and got married on a Saturday. Sunday rather, and was taking I took a couple of days off for a honeymoon. Halfway between Methuen and Montpelier, Vermont is a place called Woodland, New Hampshire, I think. And we had rented a log cabin, very nice, with a little pond. It was very nice, and it was kind of in between seasons, so it was very quiet.
And we drove through Haverhill, New Hampshire. And we stayed in a cabin for a couple of, nights. And then we drove to our apartment in Montpelier, Vermont, and took up residence there.
So our honeymoon was nothing to yell about in terms of extravaganza. But I had just started a job. When we had set the wedding date 10 months earlier, you don't know those things. But you kind of start a job 3 days and then take a 2-week honeymoon. You couldn't do it. And I have no regrets about it either. We have fond memories of the little place. So Montpelier became our home. We got an apartment at 350, no, it was 175 Main Street. I was born at 350 Main Street. 175 Main Street in Montpelier, Vermont. And it was an old house, little apartment upstairs, cost us $60 a month. And it was slanted. We had to take the wheels off, like the TV stand and everything, because everything would roll. But so that was our first apartment. And we spent a year there, and although we ourselves were very happy with one another, we were not happy with Montpelier. Our favorite saying was, it was the armpit of the nation.
You know, we couldn't see living in Montpelier for the rest of our lives. Because there's really, at that time, there was really nothing out there. I would say the average age at that time was probably 60.
It was very elderly. Now that doesn't look so bad. Maybe we should go back.
When we decided to leave Montpelier and return to Massachusetts, we didn't plan on having a family immediately. I went back to work full-time at Lawrence General. Jim had gotten a job at Stoneham High School. So we kind of wanted to save some money, and we wanted to buy a house.
Surely not up in Montpelier where we were going to have a child. I would say probably in May of 1966, we decided, well, why don't we give it a shot? And Lynn was born 9 months later. And so I think that we then decided, well, we don't want another child right on top of this one immediately. So we waited probably 2 years. How much? Let's see, until May of 1969. And we said, well, maybe if we tried, we could have another child. And 9 months later, along came Julie.
It was great. I loved being pregnant. Other than the first 3 months, I was very, very nauseated. And I had morning sickness every morning. And I think I dropped like about 15 pounds. I couldn't eat. I just was nauseated all the time. And then after that, I felt great. Felt great. Oh, it took a couple of years for me, actually, to decide to have another child. Actually, it was we did agree, but I wanted to wait a couple of years before we had another child. I wanted Lynn to be at least walking and fairly self-sufficient before I went back into diapers and pacifiers and, 4 o'clock feedings. So we decided to wait a couple of years. When I went back to work when Lynn was about 3 months old. And I worked 2 nights, 3 to 11. And Dad, we were like passing ships in the night. I would get a babysitter for 2:30, leave the house at 2:30, and Dad would come home around 4 o'clock, and Dad would take care of Lynn. And that's how it was the entire time. And he would spend, all his time with you. He'd give you a bath, make sure you went to bed at the right time. If you didn't, then you heard about it.
Of course, when you're real young, it's just a matter of changing diapers, feeding, burping, putting them to bed, and then sitting down, listening carefully to see if they're falling asleep. We had the perfect world. Mom could work nights, or Jane could work nights. I worked days. And that turned out to be a very good thing, along with a pattern of life that remained for the next 50 years. When it was no longer necessary for me to work days and Mom to work nights, she still worked nights and I worked days. And I think it was a good thing. I think it gave me an opportunity to be a little bit more on the feminine side with the kids, because I changed the diapers, I fed them, I was in charge with them 3 days a week, 3 nights a week, which a lot of people aren't. You go to diapers, and little by little you see less of the kids. They're still living with you. It's just a slow, gradual. It's like your face never changes day by day, but over a long period of time, you take a look when you're 40 versus when you were 10, you've changed quite a bit. But I think that a marriage, through all its stages, is just like that. It's very gradual. You don't notice the changes. You don't all of a sudden become free of the kids. And so it's very gradual. And all of a sudden, they're gone, and you've got just a little more freedom than you had when they were 17. Maybe fewer worries.
Marriage is a partnership. And that's pretty much how Dad and I have gotten through 45 years of marriage, because it's a partnership.
A lot of people weren't lucky enough to be married 50 years. We didn't face some of the challenges they've faced. We've never had a disaster. You know, we've never had a sick child or a death, an unexpected death in the family. So we've been blessed, with the exception of the deaths of all our dogs as they've gone along, which is challenging for a couple of days. But we've been very lucky. Our marriage hasn't had to survive great challenges, for which we can be very thankful.